My name is Dawna Gonzalez. I am a jiu-jitsu, women's self-defense, and empowerment coach. I think the world is a better place when badass women are doing badass things. One of my favorite quotes is, "Well-behaved women rarely make history." I couldn't agree more. So, I'm talking to the misbehaved ones. I hope you like it. Luci, thank you so much for meeting with me today. How are you?
I'm doing well. The sun is coming up here in Ecuador more and
You're in Ecuador?
warming up. Yeah,
Oh,
we moved here in July. Yes. So we
amazing.
get to be here. I love it. We love it. We're
Okay,
all
okay,
enjoying
so we're gonna get there in a minute. So,
it.
when I describe you to women, I want to know, how do you describe the work that you do? Because when I tell people about you, I'm like, I know a sex goddess coach, and you should follow her, and you should contact her, and you should work with her. So, how would you
I love
describe?
that.
In my opinion, it's the perfect description of you. So, how do you describe the work that you do and yourself?
Well, I love sex goddess. God, I might just have to adapt that one into my official bio. But yeah, I describe what I do as really embodying the fullness of the feminine. So especially we go into more of the wild feminine, the dark feminine, and integrating that into our relationships.
Hmm.
And yeah, so that's the core of my work. I would describe it as a lot of dark feminine energy.
And you work with women on finding this place inside of them?
Yes, yes. And one of those paths is through our pleasure, is through reclaiming our sexuality and doing the sexual healing, which is why, so much of my work has been focused on that throughout the past several years now.
Okay, so let's back up before we get to where you are now. How did you start doing this work? I met you like 12-ish years ago,
Oh,
right? You
right.
came into a jujitsu
Yes.
class and we became friends and we've just kind of kept in touch on social media. But okay, you were a singer,
Yeah.
you were a performer back then, and you still are.
Yes.
Where did you grow up and how did you start winding yourself into maybe where you started this work?
Yeah. Okay. This is a great question because when we met, that was still a few years before I had my big wake up call in
Okay.
life. So that was a big fork in the road. You have these moments in life where they're defining moments and you can quit on yourself. You can give up. It's like when you're on the mat and you just like gassed out. You're
Yeah.
like, no, I'm done. But you reach what you think is your capacity. And then there's something in you that's like, don't you fucking quit. You need to keep going.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was the pivotal moment, the first pivotal moment I would say of my life. And that was when around 2015 to 2016, my husband at the time, which, now we've gone through a divorce and this whole, we'll get into it, right?
Yeah.
But he went through a period of about 2.5 years of depression and disability, or I should say disability that then turned into depression. And that was the time that I was having our fourth child, already had three to take care of. I was the working parent. My body just rebelled and I developed this autoimmune disorder and couldn't figure it out. It became my whole identity and personality inside where I was just trying to fix it and figure out what was wrong with my body while taking care of a family and finances and all that. And I was just done. Like I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. And I knew that I couldn't control my circumstances and I was tired of fighting my own body. And I started looking for different solutions. Now, at that time, too, I was beginning to step out of the conditioning of the particular faith, the religion that I had grown up in. I was a pastor's daughter.
Mm.
And because like giving it to God wasn't working. I'm like, here, take it, take it. It's not going anywhere. Nothing's happening. And I started to find these different healing tools and people speaking on, life challenges and stuff differently than what I heard in church. And at that time, things like life coaching and personal development were not quite, or not like this big thing. It was,
Hmm.
it was still kind of this peripheral thing. But I started to go into these unorthodox modalities and I discovered, healing through the body and working with the subconscious mind and unraveling limiting beliefs. That was my entry point. And then that helped me to begin to really feel my feelings for the first time, like the deep, deep, heavy stuff. And that's where my healing actually happened.
Mm.
And then from there was this arc of like, oh, if I'm meant to be an ever expansive being, and I'm limiting myself in my pleasure, for example, in what I think it is appropriate to be a woman. And that started getting me to challenge all of these different beliefs I had about sexuality, about womanhood, about like what it is to be human. And that's kind of the rabbit trail that unfolded from there.
How old were you when this awakening happened, when you realized, like, shit, this path that I was on isn't working? I have to do something different.
Yeah, I was 30.
You
I
were
was just
30.
turning 30.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's the age. I tell with this all about the guys that I train, but I'm like, you don't really become an adult until you're 30. I know that we treat people in their 20s
It's,
like they're adults, but you don't become an adult until you're 30. You don't start to understand who you are, like your relationship with the world, your relationship with yourself. I think that's the
yeah.
age where we're like, oh, whoa.
Yeah. Oh, and everybody else is not responsible for my happiness. That was
Yeah.
fucking brutal wake up call. It's like, oh no, I have to do that.
So you had this wake up call, and it's like, okay, the path that I was on, the traditional path that we're led to follow, or that we're raised to follow, isn't working for me. I'm gonna forge my own path. And how long was that process before you're like, okay, now I have to go teach other women what I've learned? What was that time
Yeah.
period?
So interestingly, I was already working with people. I was coaching people even
Mm-hmm.
back when we met. So I would say I've been an entrepreneur for since that end of that year,
Mm-hmm.
like shortly after we left. So shortly after we met, and then I left my job that I was at that time, and I just trusted the universe and said, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I know this ain't it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so these past 13 years, almost 13 years, I've been coaching and doing a lot of supporting people. At first, it was integrating fitness coaching with some like life support, like
Mm-hmm.
not life support, you know what I mean, but like kind of what we could consider a flavor of life coaching. But it felt like there was this depth that I couldn't access yet because I
Mm.
hadn't gone through my initiation yet, basically. So I had been coaching, and then that turned into business coaching and working with entrepreneur moms. I had a whole brand specifically dedicated for a few years to entrepreneur moms because we got a unique set of challenges. And so when I started to shift in myself, in fact, it wasn't a one-time thing. There have been many variations of that. Um, for example, I went from fitness coaching to just life coaching. Then I went from just life coaching to talking about sexuality, to talking about spirituality, to talking about relationship, like all of the nuances of that. And every time that I have had these big expansions in myself, as part of my design and what I'm here to do is to integrate that into my work almost as it's happening, but not quite simultaneously. So even now, I can have something that I had a breakdown about something this morning, and then I had the aha, and then I bring that to a public reel or something
Yeah.
because I meant to like alchemize and transmute that pretty immediately. And I've learned this about myself through my birth chart and things like that too. And that feels the most in flow for me. So to answer your question, it's like both things would be happening at once. I would be forged in my process as I would share, and that would help me refine it. And I am learning just as much from the messages that I receive as the people that are receiving them sometimes.
Okay, so you're
Very humbling.
yeah, like I've been following you this whole time. And you're
Yeah.
so vulnerable with what you put online. Like almost in a way. Okay, so I've been asking many questions about you over the years. Number one is,
Yeah.
how do you do this with 4 children?
I get that. I get that question. I got
That's
that
the first
yesterday.
question. I'm always like, dude, she has 4 kids. Like what? And you seem to have these moments where you're like dancing and like is so in tune with yourself and so able to be present in the work that you're doing. And I layer life coaching into a lot of the work that I do with self-defense and jujitsu coaching. And so I
Yes.
get it.
Yeah.
And maybe because I'm not a mom, I don't like it seems so overwhelming to me. How do you still manage to stay in this really present place while also being present for your children?
Mm. So there are two things that I want to speak to on this. One is that, because yesterday I got the question on something I posted, and she said, "How do you have time to make these reels?" And I said, "It's not about time. It's if I am devoted to being in tune with that, being that channel, being that vessel. When the message comes, the moment presents itself. I don't need a lot of time to actually put together things. I've refined it over the years, over repetition and practice. Like the logistics of putting together a carousel, for example, I can do that really fucking fast
Okay.
because that's just, something I've practiced a lot. But when the moment, it's almost like, there are some deeper energetic and spiritual things at play here. Absolutely. So it's almost like the moment creates itself when the message comes through. And it's up to me to say yes.
Okay.
Or I could be like, oh, I don't want to share that about myself. I don't know. I'm just over that because I'm like, who cares?
Yeah.
When I don't do it, I feel misaligned with myself. The other piece of this is that being a parent, I feel, has made me, because my oldest is about to be 18 this year. So I've been parenting for almost 2 decades,
No.
which is wild. And I'm about to have another
What?
baby in 3 months. I know. Crazy. I don't know where time goes.
I
Literally,
agree.
but it's like, since being a parent does, on the practicality of things, limit your time, you learn to make better use of time. It's like that saying that, if you want something done, you give it to a busy person. Now, my challenge, maybe as a Capricorn, I don't know, my challenge that I didn't start to unravel until that big defining moment with Ryan and that whole experience was not hiding behind productivity, with actually creating space for ease and pleasure and just rest, not feeling like I need to earn my rest through productivity or my worth through productivity, but that I get to do my most resourced work when I take care of myself, my vessel, my energy, my rituals, whatever. And then that flows so much more easily. And that's a practice that it's been years of
Yeah.
just refining that. Yeah.
How was there a moment that you're like, I'm just going to share everything? Like, I'm not going to filter myself for the people who follow me, the people that I work with, because there have been moments over the years that
Yes.
I've watched what you posted and I've been like, I don't know if I
I've seen
would,
it all.
if I would, if I have it in myself to myself out there like that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
you and I haven't spoken to each other in person in like a decade. And I feel like I'm
Yes.
such an intimate friend of yours because you just share so much about your life and like the scary, ugly moments, like with your marriage. You just put it all out there.
Yeah.
How do you sometimes post something and you're like, I don't know if I should have done that? Or I can't believe I did that? Or are you just like, yeah, no, I've decided to share it. And so I'm sharing everything. And what was that
Yeah.
like navigating your marriage, navigating your breakup? Like you just put everything. You shared it with all of us. And so people who don't know, if you don't follow Lucy, like you documented the highs of your relationship, the start of the downfall, and then literally the heartbreaking moments of your last days of marriage. How did you do that?
Yeah. I want to take it back to 2019. That was the year that I decided, actually, that was the year I took a break from coaching
Mm-hmm.
and I completely immersed myself into just being a performer and just getting back into artistry of writing music. And, like now it's like I'll still write music. Last year, this time of last year, I released an EP. I wrote 6 songs in the span of 36 hours and recorded 4 of them 3 days later, so it's like I work fast.
Yeah.
But when the inspiration comes, again, I get to say yes or no. And I like saying yes because I love the expansion that happens and the liberation that happens when I do. And so back in 2019, when I just completely took the pressure off myself to be this kind of coach or be like professional or is this professional? And I was like, fuck it all. And not only that, I'm going to really explore my edges as a woman and as an artist and post something every single day. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the year that I
Oh,
decided I don't care what it is. If I just feel like shit one day, I'm going to talk about that. And maybe nobody cares. Maybe people will be like, why is she talking about herself? I had to confront so many shadows to just get over my fucking self
yeah.
so that I could do what I'm doing now. But there was that practice of showing up and being with all of the projections, being with the reflections, being with that deep shadow work. I started to really go deep into it. I started to talk about, and especially after COVID happened, I felt this nudge to get back into coaching. And I was like, no, I don't want to help people with their problems. I'm just having fun being on stage. And then, universe is like, sorry, that's not available right now. And you are being rerouted. And so I started the Pussy Powered brand, and I started talking about my journey with self pleasure and how that opened up so much healing and the deep shadow work in that. And that was vulnerable. To be a former pastor's daughter with her whole family watching online from a distance, my mom at certain points literally said, "Are you trying to bring me shame?" And I said, "No, I am not. In fact, this is not about you at all.
Right.
I just want to feel free." So the big energy behind it, because there's two things, and I've talked about this with certain friends very in depth. When people wonder what's the difference between, let's say, oversharing and sharing vulnerably, like sharing from your heart. And I feel like one big distinction is, why are you sharing it?
Mm,
Are you sharing it to get pity or approval, or are you sharing it to liberate yourself, to free yourself of the shame that you've had wrapped up in that thing? So that, hey, if something is floating around about that thing, you're like, yeah, that's me. That happened to me. I'm going through that. There is also a level of, obviously, discernment of when to share what. Because, for example, with the divorce, I didn't share right away when I knew
mm-hmm.
that it was happening. It wasn't like, oh my God, you guys, this morning I filed for divorce. No, I had to take time to process and honor our family and the journey, and really just not have anyone else's energy in that. I say things when I can say it with my full fucking chest.
Mm,
It just so happens that now I can say that much sooner than I could 6 years ago. And that is what anchors me into what I will call my light, so that whatever people are projecting, it doesn't matter. That's not going to break me or shake me. It's just like, here I am. And that's what people feel. They feel that distinction. And if someone tries to just share everything about their life without, doing the work in their vessel first, then yeah, you might get a little bit of a different result,
yeah.
or it might come across differently. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. How? So when did your divorce begin? And then how long did you wait to start sharing that with everybody online?
Well, the weird thing, and I talk about this on one of the episodes on my podcast with one of the healers that I've been working with
Oh,
since
I'm going
that
to listen to
time.
that.
You gotta listen to it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I also talk about how, this whole connection with Brendan started and what that process was
We're gonna
like.
get
So
there.
that's literally an hour plus. So I won't go into, but in like a nutshell, I didn't see it coming.
Mm,
I literally didn't see it coming, and I wasn't meant to.
mm-hmm.
And again, that's something that Priscilla and I talk about in that episode. But it's like, I just needed to know that I was on the right path, and that was the right path. It just ended in that relationship coming to a completion, actually probably at our highest point.
Really?
It's not like, yeah, it's not like things fell apart. I think a lot of times when people get a divorce or break up, it's because they're not happy, or somebody cheated, or somebody lost feelings, or somebody's needs are not getting met, or something like that. But it was literally like, and again, this is way more than I can unpack here, but there were some sensitive mental health things in the mix as well. And they had been manageable for as long as we've been married. But it's like there was that delineation, that point of where all of a sudden he just had to go on this path.
Hmm.
And I couldn't follow him there. Up until that point, there was a not a middle ground, but like a way that neither of us would be compromising ourselves and abandoning our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, at that point, it just became really clear. And I mean, literally overnight, that if I follow him there, I would be disintegrating inside. And if he followed me where I needed to go, then he would be abandoning himself. So we, in complete peace, we made that decision. And I was the one who did initiate. I really just laid it out there. I said, I can't do that with you. I cannot. And it's not just about me. It's the vision for the family. This is no. And so like, I love you. And and my love for him, it grew through that experience and through the uncoupling, and then just really like releasing him, releasing each other. And that's a whole other conversation too, is how that happened. Because I believe that the way that we truly release someone is not just by breaking up or packing up things in different houses or whatever, but by having, like, I'm telling you, like, I've had such gratitude for him and for our time together and for the children we've created together and everything, every hardship, every hell that we've been through together in our journey. Like, so much gratitude that I would just cry because I'm like, that was perfect, and that that opened me even more. And so by the time that I did connect with Brendan, it was like, oh, fuck, like my capacity to love, like really love, not just like I need you and you need to fulfill what I expect of you, but like we aligned just so amazingly that I was like, is this too good to be true? Again, another tangent and everything that's it.
What's your relationship with your ex like now?
Well, that is an interesting thing as well. Because the path that he chose was to be completely untethered.
Oh.
And that includes, So this is the only thing probably that to honor his process and also just not have to go into the details of things. Like he's completely in his own reality, like pretty much not reachable. That was the hardest thing for me to come to terms with because of the kids. It's like, I can let you go, but you will not do to me what my father did to them, to me. You will not do to them what my father did to me. So there was actually a lot of healing between me and my father in that wound through my divorce because I saw so much of him reflected in him. And it helped me to close this loop of guilt that I was projecting onto my mom. So there was a lot there. And also just really for not even forgiveness, but just, I guess there's an element of forgiveness, but really just understanding that he is exactly on his path.
Okay.
And that doesn't justify any of the pain. Yeah. But that's part of where the gratitude comes from. It's just like, thank you for choosing to play that role in his life.
Dude, what?
Taking a hit for the team.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
exactly.
Do you go into more detail on this on your podcast?
Not a whole lot.
Okay.
I don't go into much detail of that in general.
Okay.
Just because I don't even really know what's happening in Ryan's life right now. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's
fair.
wild.
Like it's But you do go into like more of the because there's gonna be people listening that are like
process.
Yes. There's gonna be people listening that like I need more details. So go listen to Luci's podcast if you want more details. Totally fair. Okay. How long after your divorce when did you move to Ecuador, and was meeting your new honey, what's connected? When did Ecuador come into play? Because I thought you were living in San Diego.
I was. And this is the thing is, and again, this part I do go more into detail in that second episode with Priscilla. So that one, I want to say, what did I title that episode? It was like, healing through heartbreak and opening to new love. I think that was the title that we landed on. It was just a couple weeks ago, so it's newish. You can find it on the Liberated Feminine podcast. But it in the spring, I was actually already going to Peru to be with my family, and Ryan was supposed to be a part of that trip because it was planned so far in advance. And so, of course, and I thought maybe we could still make that work together, we co-parent, but no, he was not available for that, for any of it. And so I said, okay, well, I'm still going to go along with the kids. They have never been to my home country and met my family, my grandmother, who is 91. And I said, yeah, we're going to go.
This is
And
spring of
yeah,
2024, right? Spring of
yeah,
2024?
yeah,
Okay.
last spring, yes. And Brendan had been traveling. He'd been pretty much a nomad for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And after playing professional baseball and doing cacao ceremonies and leading plant medicine and just being in all these different, in different places in Latin America, especially. And I was feeling really drawn to the land. And so I was planning on bringing the kids, and it just sort of turned out, anyways, he was in Colombia. We started connecting virtually at first, and it was confusing to me because literally I had been getting this message from my guides in the sessions that I'd been doing with these particular people that were helping me through the healing, before. And we continued our sessions, and it was beautiful. And it felt right. And they said, yeah, you need to make a list of what you want in your future partner. And I was like, no, I don't see the point because I'm not going to have a partner.
You're like, I'm done with that.
I'm not. Yeah, no, I was like, I feel complete.
Yeah.
I wasn't like jaded or anything. I was like, it will happen one day, I'm sure. But also, like, my life is full of so much love. Like, I am so full. Not overwhelmed full, but like, I'm just like, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
And I was feeling the most radiant I had ever felt. And I finally made the list, and I was like, fuck it. They keep asking me to do it. And I somehow have a whole open afternoon, which is never happens.
Yeah.
Unless I intentionally make it so. And I sat outside there in Carlsbad and made my list under the sun with my tobacco, and I called in my ancestors, and I was like, yo, help me out. Like, who is this dude, And I wrote down many pages, but not like just physical quality. That was the last page that I did, in fact. It was like, how do I want to feel around this person?
Mm.
How do I want his voice to feel in my body? Like, really specific things. How do I
Whoa,
want,
whoa,
what do I want
go
him
back
to appreciate?
To the voice in your body. Tell me about that.
Because I knew that was an important thing for me. Like, I'm a vocal person. I'm a very sensual person. I'm like, what do I want it to feel like when he touches me, when he looks at me, when he talks to me? And like, what comes alive? I was really thinking all these things. I wrote them all down. And not only that, but, how are my kids going to feel around him? What do I want him to appreciate about each of them? So I went very detailed. And then at the end, I was like, and yeah, it would be nice if he was between this height and maybe like, darker skin and had like interesting, cool hair and like some cool tattoos. I was literally describing him to the T, and I hadn't measured him. So the very next day, I shit you not, we start connecting.
Who connected? Who contacted who? Who? How'd that happen?
Well, technically, he was in my DMs first because he responded to a story, but it wasn't like sliding into the DM. It was like, I made a post about toxic feminine traits, and he was like, "Thank you." He felt seen, and yeah, but he said he was posting a story about the equinox, and I was like, "Yeah, that is the correct start to the year." And I don't know how, Dawna, but that turned into a whole conversation, and it ended up turning into something. And there was a point where he said, wait, what is happening right now? Like, I don't do this. I was like, neither do I. There's something else happening here. So yeah, we connected virtually for a while. And really, when you don't get to be in a physical space with someone, first of all, you can't get physical too fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you really got to get to know them and be super intentional. Time zone differences, all that stuff. It was just really like, we went deep into like, who are you? And for those of you who do believe in the karmic things and the past life things, like, we definitely had some unfinished business, and this is where we get to actually enjoy the fruits of that. We've done like some hard shit in the past together, and now, so because it really flows. There was such a peace and an ease. It wasn't like these butterflies. I mean, yeah, I was excited. I was like, oh, when you fall in love with someone, but it was such a deep peace and like a still knowing. And yeah, so we met physically for the first time in my birth city in Lima, and on that trip, yeah. And then we spent basically, it's like everything in my life. It's like, who does that? Literally, you've seen
Yeah.
throughout
Yeah.
the process. Like, who does that? I do that. Apparently, that's what I signed up for in this life. Hello. Oh my God. And all of the kids just loved him off the bat, welcomed him, were just like they felt so safe with him. He has such a groundedness to him, and you can feel his enormous heart, you know? And
Mm.
so yeah, just everything about our journey has been unheard of.
Yeah, because you're having a new baby.
Yeah. And that's the other piece, is that my tubes were tied
What?
for 8 years.
And there goes my next. I was gonna say, was it intentional? So it was
Yeah,
intentional. You were like,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And then I tell you too, Dawna, and again, some of the folks out there listening maybe who aren't really, but I think they will be, because they're your folks, they're your peeps. They're spiritually tapped into, to these things. I felt the presence of these spirit babies when we were first connected. Yeah. Yeah. And it scared me, because I thought, wait, I thought I was done with that. I don't know how that would happen. And I envisioned this whole thing where I would be going through in vitro treatments and things. And I was like, yo, if this is how these babies are meant to come in, whenever that timing may be, because I'm not limited to my age. I really have not believed that. I have not felt that in a cell of my body. I'm too old. I'm about to turn 40, when I'm having a baby. And it's been 10 years. But I was just open. And that's the thing, is like I fully believe, and I have seen over and over and over again, that the choices that you make from an open heart, not out of like reaching or scarcity or lack or fear or like desperation, but just being open and willing to love, not like romantic love. I mean, like love. That will just like figure itself out for me, So it came a point where it just became clear, I discovered that it was possible to rejoin my tubes. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know. This lady at the sauna that I was going to, the cold plunging sauna, I had never met her. She walked into the sauna. She happened to have just had that surgery the year before and gotten pregnant and had her baby. And I was like, wow, what are the odds? And so, yeah, so I had the procedure done, and it was actually a success, because that's the other thing, is you don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah.
So
sometimes
it's just
bodies do their own
big,
thing.
long ass. Yeah, exactly. It's just a big, long ass journey of surrender.
Wow.
And just being non-attached to the outcome. But here we are. Yeah, I'm 6 months pregnant.
Oh my God. And when did you move to Ecuador?
At the end of July.
So you just got there. Oh no, it's almost a year.
Yeah,
You've been there almost a year.
It's almost a year. I mean, yeah, I guess. Wow. Yeah, it's 10 months. 10 months. And that was the other thing too, was who does that? Who moves 4 kids once they know that, also they don't have an active participant of their dad, and it's like, that's neither here nor there at that point, and goes to another country. And it just felt right. This land was calling to us. When we went to Peru, which is right next to Ecuador, and we chose Ecuador for some other reasons that I get to be too complicated to explain here, but they all felt at home there. They loved the land. They loved the Andes. They loved the jungle. And it was like, okay, yeah. So everyone's thriving here.
And I imagine they're all going through their own healing process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And this has been a very beautiful land that's really held us. And there's so much nature, so much beauty. And the energy at the equator is a very distinct energy as well.
What is your mission? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump, but like, you just said that, and I'm like, yeah. So, what is your mission when working with women? Or do you only work with women, or do you also work with men? Okay, when working with people?
Yeah, I've worked with men. Now, I generally work with women more than couples or men, but throughout the years, I have worked with quite a few men as well, who just want to understand more of how to come into this place of inner harmony and union and support with their relationships. But I do work primarily with women, and my vision in everything that I do is for people to come to this place of liberation in themselves. And it's not just like identifying the things that keep them, like their limiting beliefs and the things and their traumas and the things they've got to heal, but like, how can you embody more joy and more pleasure, more like the richness in life? Because we don't want to make healing our whole identity either. And so it's that liberation, and that's where like the erotic embodiment comes in. where the sensual movement or the self-pleasure practice, it's like, where do you in your body hold these memories of shame or being too much or being too whatever?
Yeah.
And releasing that so that you can just be lighter and free and do what you're here to do.
How do you help somebody who, like, let's say they grew up like you, with, very heavy religious presence, and you are this wild feminine sex goddess that we're gonna call it.
I like that too.
One of the friends that I recommended look you up one day, I was like, she's gonna be a lot for you. Just trust me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just don't be scared, because I don't want to tell her story. It's her story to tell. But she was going through a divorce and had a very religious upbringing. I mean, and her religion is still a huge part of her life. I'm not talking about that, but
The faith element is
her
big.
sexuality was very limited and stagnant even in her marriage. And I was like, I have a friend I want you to look up. I was like, don't be overwhelmed, but this is who you need to follow.
A little scary at first.
I know. I was like, she's gonna scare you, just so you know. So how would a person, like, so I've always been pretty like out there and open, and I don't fall into any boxes. So like when you started doing that, I was like, this is awesome. I'm so into it. Like, yes, please. I was like, Lucy wants to do something in the jungle where she's gonna shake a feather in your face and you're gonna dance by the moonlight. I'm in.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I was like, where do I sign up? Take my money. But how do you start with somebody who's like so not in touch with that wild feminine and just destigmatize it in a way? I guarantee you there's going to be somebody listening. They're going to be like, oh, this sounds enticing, scary, a lot, not something that I'm used to. How do you start that conversation with somebody who's maybe not for me, but I'm interested in what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if it's a literal conversation, then a lot of that is just me listening to let they have an introductory call with someone, and they ask them, okay, what is the number one thing you want to talk about or take away from this? And they'll sometimes just say connection. Okay, right, could mean anything.
Yeah. Connection to what?
What do you mean by that? Yeah, connection to yourself, to your sexuality, to your partner, to your purpose, like what? And again, there's no separation between any of it. Like, me knowing that helps just going into this. But a lot of that is just me listening. And if they are in a place where they're just open, the access point might be as simple as, okay, well, where are you feeling disconnected? Like, there's something that brought you here. There's something that all of a sudden made you aware that, oh, maybe there's something going on with my sexuality, or maybe there's some kind of block with something, or like I can't have an orgasm. That's actually a really common access point for people that come to me, is like, I have a really hard time having an orgasm, or I just have never had one, or I've never had one with my partner, for example.
Yeah.
And so it's just unpacking that. That's this kind of more surface pain point, I would say, that reveals something much deeper. And I also am of the mind that we don't come across people, and vice versa, unless it has been orchestrated, right? Unless it is time.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time that they do come to me, even if I trigger the fuck out of them, it's like there's something there for them. They're there for something.
Yeah.
Now, if they're actually asking what's the first step in beginning to unpack these things in myself, I actually shared this in the very first episode of my podcast too. This is one thing is just taking up more space.
Yeah.
Make it a practice to take up more space. And this is just with yourself. It would be, and you've probably seen this, Dawna, like how uncomfortable women especially can be taking up space when they're completely alone. Like, they feel awkward dancing in front of themselves. It feels performative. They don't want to literally use their voices. Their breathing is shallow. So if you can just practice taking up more space as a daily practice, I mean, in some way, shape, or form. And this is why I love to return to the things like dancing and vocalizing and just making sounds, singing, speaking the things that you are declaring for yourself that day out loud. And that's one easy, like, super practical way to begin.
Yeah. A lot of our work overlaps that way. When women come to me to find their power through self-defense or jujitsu or something, taking up space is one of my favorite things to say. You know, like, you have every
Yeah.
right to be on these mats just as much as everybody else. You're not taking something away from somebody else by being here. And like really
Yes.
owning that, speaking from, I call it the coach voice. I don't know what you would call it, but speaking from your core as opposed to speaking from like this place up here where we're all, very light and polite, and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong
Very
with being
nice.
light and sweet and soft. But there are times that we need to come like speak from our core and like
Yeah.
really ground ourselves in energy. And I feel that I to my core, I know that moment when working with women and like in your power. And I think you and I are finding the same power with women, approaching it in from
Yes.
different directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would call it the way that I feel it in my own body and that I speak on it is speaking from our womb
Mm,
for those who have wombs. Or even if you don't, there's that space still.
yeah.
There's just like deep. And how I landed with that is when I started to speak from my deeper truth instead of what I thought I should say or what sounded more palatable and like digestible, I could physically feel this like warm, glowy, solid, like sovereign, right there at my cervix, like right there at the entrance of my womb.
How interesting.
And like physically, that's where I feel it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
when I get answers in my body, not like anxiety induced answers,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, what should I do? But like that deep knowing, it's from that place. And so speaking from that, or even like I would say energetically speaking from your solar plexus. So like when people say it with your chest, but when I energetically say it with my womb, it's
Hmm.
like I'm not apologetic about it,
Yeah.
but I'm also not like I don't have to be unkind about it, but I can be clear and direct and firm without wavering. It's that.
How would you define the divine feminine? Like, what is that for you? Because I find it so interesting how you layer motherhood and sexuality and sensualness, and like all of it seems to be the same for you. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
times, maybe through polite society, we those things are separate for most people. Would you think so?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They're fragmented. I mean, just look at the Madonna whore complex.
Mm-hmm.
You know that thing? Have you heard of
Yeah, yeah,
it?
yeah,
It's like,
sure.
yeah, yeah. So for those who don't know, it's like the Madonna, not as in the singer, but as in like the saint, the virgin. That confused me for a long time. I'm not ashamed to say. I was like, but isn't
You're like, but
Madonna
her music's
the
so
whore?
good.
I'm like, how is that the opposite of whore? I'm here for it, you know? So a little tidbit on that, because I was actually generally confused about that for some years. But it's this complex where, let's say, a man is all about this woman until he impregnates her,
Mm-hmm.
and then he can't see her in a sexual way anymore. Like he's
Yeah.
now she's the mother. Now she's supposed to be demure and like appropriate. Thankfully, my partner is not that, because he's like the first things he noticed last year was like, "Wow, you can shift from what do you say from mom mode to slut mode so fast." I was like, I know, it is a gift. I cultivated it on
I
purpose.
love that.
Yes. And the more that we do come home to ourselves, this is what I found. The more integrated we are, the less of a like fragmentation there is. We can flow
Mm-hmm.
between these different aspects of us. They are not separate. They all lend to each other. They're all a part of each other. It's just we buy into this illusion that they're completely different parts. And then we struggle to access certain ones because we think, oh, well, now I'm a professional. Can I still do that? Now I'm a mom. Can I still move like that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really challenging, the things that we've just picked up on in programming. I wrote a whole book recently about that was not a plan. I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. I said yes. I just wrote a whole book. It's called R.I.P. to the Good Girl, and it's coming out next month.
Nice.
And 13 chapters, and it's all a reclamation of the dark feminine. So it's like for us to have this life of the fullness of our feminine, not just that, but also our masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And this it could be another whole conversation. So we can be whole human beings that don't reject any part of ourselves, that good girl inside of us has to be buried. The one who feels like, oh, I can't do that. I can't go there. I can't see that. I can't. So that all of the distorted stuff that comes as a result of repressing your truth doesn't come ripping through your life, which is what often happens in people in midlife crises and things like that. So that's the real work right there.
So I find it interesting that you just referred to the good girl, but then everything that followed after that was saying no, being nice, not like it was all negative stuff. Why is being the good girl about repression?
Yes, because let's say, okay, so we'll define what the good girl is. Because being a good girl, and I actually like in a kinky way, I love being called a good girl. It does something to me. And I own that. I'm
Okay.
like, cool,
Okay.
okay. All right. Yeah, you're being a good girl. Yes. I'm like, tell me more. But that's different from, let's say, operating from the energy of being a good girl, which is imagine that you are a small child and you just want to belong. You just want to feel loved. And you feel like you have to perform or be a certain way in order to be worthy of love. And that is really what I would say good girl programming teaches us, that don't be too loud, don't ask for too much, don't need too much. You need to be soft and gentle and quiet and agreeable. And if you're angry, you're crazy. That it's the repression. When we are only in this space of, I need to be good, we're so worried about being good that we forget that we get to be whole. And that's what I mean.
Say that again.
That's the repression.
We're so worried about being good that we forget to be whole. Because what would the whole look like? What is the whole? Is the whole being good girl and bad girl? Is the whole being what? What's that? Go on.
And actually it's taking out, and I go like so deep in this in the book. So also check that out, but I pre-order it. But it's not about being good or bad. It's that you take this whole good, bad, binary thinking completely out of the picture. And you say, basically, there is space for all of me. If I need to just rage the fuck out, I'm going to create space for that. I'm not going to wait until I have years of technically I did. And this is how I learned it the hard way. Wait until it builds up for years, and then there comes a moment where I'm like, I can't fucking do this anymore, and then just have those fights and have those things, and then it's other people's fault, and we resent not having our needs met because we never said them in the fucking first place, because we were disowning our own needs. So there is a breaking point that every person can hit or can reach that is destructive. On the other hand, if you make space for that, that's what I learned to do when I was at that critical point in 2015 and 16, at the end of 16, where I finally felt safe enough to actually feel my rage and actually feel the grief. And it was held by this community of people that we were there to do that work together with so much love and acceptance, and without criticism and without, oh, you're crazy, that's too much, like, what's wrong with you? You should be grateful. Like, what are you complaining about? It was just witnessed and loved, and that's what we need. And we need to create space for that for ourselves too.
Yeah. 100% agree. So how can people work with you? Like, if somebody is just connecting to everything that you're saying, what are the ways that people can work with you?
So firstly, the most accessible thing once the book is out, it's not like it's specifically working with me, but if you want to go deeper into these kinds of themes, that book is coming out June 20th of this year, and it'll be on Amazon and the places to print. The next step would be one of my courses. So at this point, I have, I think, upwards of 30 courses.
Oh,
so
wow.
A lot of different things. Yeah. So shadow work, inner child healing, erotic play with your partner, working through conflict with your partner, embodied dance, pole dance, self-pleasure, squirting, using your voice, like the whole gamut. So check that out at LuciLampe.com, or at thewildawakening.com is where all of the courses actually live. And then next is if I happen to have an in-person immersion or something like that. At this point, I have a weekend immersion happening at the end of June, and I have a weekend virtual retreat in a couple weeks from now for women entrepreneurs
Mm.
and who want to embody more of the both masculine and feminine in their businesses. And then finally, if they want to work with me one-on-one through coaching or mentorship, that would also be at lucilampe.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I'm so happy we got to connect and I got to hear everything. Thank you for being so vulnerable on your social media. Like I said, for years, we haven't spoken to each other in person in years.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I've been so connected to seeing your life and your story and knowing what's going on with you. And I truly have felt a friendship with you this whole time.
Yes, yes. And I love that. And yet you see like how much wasn't revealed.
Yeah.
So it's like we unpacked a lot here that you have no idea about.
Yeah.
So there's just like so much. There's so much. So it's like what will serve people, what will free me.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, you've definitely inspired me
always
that,
happening.
There's always stuff to share and that, yeah, maybe I'll start sharing some stuff that I'm going through with people because what I've learned is whenever you do share, there's always something. Someone somewhere is like, man, I needed to hear that. Literally every time I make a post, I always get a message. They're like, man, I needed to hear that today, or thank you, or I'll teach a seminar and then I'll get afterwards. And women are like, I needed that one thing that you said during the seminar or, during our coaching session. So yeah, I think it's important for all of us to share our experiences because we're all so connected and we can learn so much just from watching our friends and other women explore and evolve through their life.
Yeah. And then people realize, maybe I'm not as alone in this as I thought.
Yeah. That's the other thing.
And we need that.
I totally agree. Yeah. Especially now where everything's so disconnected. And man, there just seems to be so much anger in the world right now. More so than I've ever felt in my lifetime. That, yeah, I think that just more positivity, more love, more understanding of people.
Yeah. More realness too with a perspective of love. Because right now it's like people, I think we're seeing more of that anger and that like aggression because people are more awake to their pain. And so we need more, not like fluffy love and light, but like the real shit.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is why I'm all about like, hey, let's darken light. And dark isn't bad. Dark is fertile soil. Dark is transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can stop being scared of it and welcome it and then like emerge a little bit lighter.
Thank you. This is such a fun conversation. I'm really enjoying everything that you're sharing online. Huge, fat congratulations on finding new love and a baby and like all of your adventures that you're having. All of that. Thanks for everything. And I really appreciate you taking the time with me today.
Thank you, Dawna. And thank you for, exploring all these different twists and turns in the conversation. I love it. For all of it.
Yeah, sometimes I just jump all over the place. I'm like, what about this? What about this?
Yeah, that's how my brain works, though. So I track with you.
Good. I'm so glad. Because I was telling my therapist the other day, she was like, what? And I was like, well, there's a carousel in my head. So it just kind of depends on what's at the front is what's coming out of my mouth at that moment. It like might be something totally unrelated that comes out a few minutes later because the carousel is just going and like, this is the horse that's in front right now.
No, I feel you. I tracked it with you.
Okay, cool. So everybody can follow you at lucilampe.com and all of your social media handles are there.
At Luci Lampe.
I will keep following you. Thanks for sharing everything. Have an amazing day and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Dawna. Thank you, everyone.